All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. TGIF. One more Friday after this until the election. That's awesome. Hey, everybody. I am Julie Barrett. I'm the founder of Conservative Ladies of Washington and Conservative Ladies of America. And I am excited to be joined today. We're continuing our virtual series with our CLW endorsed candidates. And this is kind of late in the game, but Jerrod has been a very busy candidate, and he is also a dear friend of mine. So full disclosure, Jerrod is my friend. He's also endorsed by Conservative Ladies of Washington. We are proud to endorse him. He meets all of our criteria for endorsement. And I just want to kind of give everybody a little background of how I met Jerrod. Back in 2021, we did a candidate town hall in the 4th Congressional District. And Jerrod was running. Brad Klippert, who was a state representative at the time, was running, as well as Lauren Culp and, of course, Dan Newhouse. And so we wanted we were baby organization, brand spanking new, and we just wanted to bring all of the candidates together, not in a debate style forum, but just in everybody getting to respond to the same questions and hear from the candidates so that they could make their own decision. We had already endorsed Brad Klippert for that race, and Jerrod was the only candidate that showed up with Brad for that opportunity. And he was very gracious. He was very kind to me. I had my daughter with me, who I think was 14 or 15 at the time. He treated us to lunch with his family. His wife, Nikki, was there. His kids were there. And he was just a really nice guy. And that was kind of the beginning of our friendship and me getting to know Jerrod personally and as a candidate. And I really liked him as both a candidate and a person. And so since then we have become friends, and immediately felt confident endorsing him for this race. He truly is a man of God, man of his family. His family is very important to him, which that to me says a lot. The way a man treats his wife and his children is very telling of his character. And Jerrod very much loves his wife and also his mother, who I also got to meet back in May. She is a sweet lady. And he's just a great guy. He truly loves America. He is truly a candidate that wants to represent the people in Washington, D.C. And we need a lot more of that. And Jerrod Sessler would be a great start. Yes, a representative that would actually follow and uphold our United States Constitution. And so with all of that said, my little monologue there, Jerrod, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. I know you have got a lot going on with the campaign, especially being so close to election. I'd love for you to, in your own words, tell people about yourself and why you are running for this position.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Before I tell you about myself, I just want to tell you I'm enamored and incredibly flattered by you. And for those watching or maybe watching this later, do look up Julie, follow her. She's got an amazing story. I think she is one of the most inspiring people, certainly in Washington State. She has a huge following across the country. And it's just a story worth listening to, and she's definitely someone to follow. So Julie, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. For those who don't know me, I am 55. I've been married to my wife, Nikki, for 28 years. Our anniversary is actually in about less than a week on November 1st. And we have 3 kids. They're 19, 21, and 23. Boy, girl, boy, and they're grown. We homeschooled them from day one. We're in a period of what we call sort of a period of mourning right now, because we loved our kids. We loved raising them, and we loved spending all the time with them. And we must have done a great job, because now they're all very independent. And that's great. In fact, our daughter graduated from college this year. She got married the next month to a very nice young man who our whole family approves of still. And they're actually expecting a baby girl early summer. So
Wow, congratulations. I didn't catch
exciting.
that news yet.
So little background for me. I served, so I graduated high school, went straight in the military, served. I was actually afraid to go to college because I didn't feel like I had the self-discipline I needed. And the military helped me with that. Then I used the GI Bill to get 2 engineering degrees in manufacturing, mechanical engineering. I worked in that industry for about 7 years. I spent, the most notable was working for Intel as a manufacturing, or they called it a materials engineer. And I didn't do anything with the electronic stuff. I was working on basically sheet metal and plastic development, manipulation, and that sort of thing. But I left that, quit a very good job in my late 20s. Nikki and I both did, to basically start a youth ministry and our own company, and just have more freedom and flexibility with our time. And we pretty much have been in business, for almost the last 30 years. And up until 2001, I was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. I saw what actually happened. Then I came home, and our congressman voted to impeach the best president of our lives. And that was the point when I decided I really wanted to run for this. Well, I knew before that I wanted to run for the seat, but I knew it was time. Prior to that, I was waiting for our congressman to retire or to move on or do something. And, it turns out he's a traitor. So I actually decided to get involved in politics in 2012 when President Obama was reelected, and I just was politically numb. I couldn't believe that we were going to have to deal with 4 more years of that weakness. And so that was the point when I actually decided I wanted to run for this seat. And as Julie mentioned, I ran last cycle. There were 7 Republicans. It was a mess. And unfortunately, our sitting congressman, the incumbent, got reelected. And so I just stuck with it. So basically, I just decided, I thought this was going to be a 2-year campaign, but I guess it's going to be a 4-year campaign. And this cycle, it's been much different. There wasn't, the onslaught of candidates running. I feel like I reached out to extend an olive branch to the other candidates who had ran last time. And I got the support. I got at least neutral with all of them. And with some of them, I actually have gotten support. And then obviously I got President Trump's endorsement, the House Freedom Caucus, the Washington State Republican Party, and every single county party in the district, and tens of thousands of people. I won the primary election by more than 10%. And we're now 10 days away from the general election. It looks really good, but, we're still facing someone who is a ruthless Republican who is desperately trying to hold on to power, and is really slandering me, which is kind of what I think got some of this started. Aside from, our friendship and our relationship, Julie was just like, oh my goodness, when is this onslaught going to stop? It's
Right.
Clearly just a bunch of lies. And I think that's what a lot of people see. So that's a bit about me. I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. I have no what do you call it? Skeletons in the closet. And I love debate. I love discussing. I don't like arguing necessarily, but I like I oftentimes I learn a lot through debate, and
Yes.
we don't do that a lot in America. And I have friends of mine who are staunchly on the other side, but we can, because we have past relationships either in the military or college or just friendships or whatever, we can still have these kind of discussions that I think are very helpful, and we need to restore that in America again. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at, and happy to take this wherever you want to go, Julie.
Yeah. So, you touched on the reason why we're doing this now. As a lot of people who have been watching our virtual tour know that we did a lot of these interviews before the primary even happened, and we just didn't get there, even and there has been a lot of hate. What do you call? Just negative campaigning, attack ads against you. And I've seen it. Other people have seen it. There's a lot of stuff going around on social media, and I really wanted to provide people, voters, citizens, an opportunity to hear from you directly, because I know the truth about you. I know the real Jerrod Sessler. And I want the people to get to see that and get to hear that from you. And so, we can, people, please feel free to, if you have questions for Jerrod, please feel free to put those in the chat, because we will be happy to answer those questions. I want to start back with the primary, because it was you and Tiffany Smiley and Dan Newhouse, and I believe there was maybe a Democrat in the race.
Yeah, there was actually the three of us, and there was 4 Democrats and 1 independent. So there was 8 candidates total.
Okay. And I remember that you very handily won that race out of all of those people. I want to say it was like 30% of the vote, of all of the vote total. And Newhouse was a very distant second. And you were also, at least on the Republican side, I didn't look at Democrat numbers, but you were also the one with the smallest campaign fund for that primary, which I personally think speaks volumes, because as we all know, that money is what usually gets people elected, which is really unfortunate, because a lot of times the really good candidates, the candidates of the people, don't have these, big PACs to draw from, or big corporations and stuff that are corrupt and want to keep corrupt people in office. So let's talk about because I know this is kind of like a push to the finish. And so they're trying to get as much dirt out and smear you as badly as they can. Let's talk about some of the accusations that Newhouse is making about you, so that you can clear that up and tell people the truth.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, we can start with probably one of the biggest ones that he has propagated, which is this, he's telling people and sending postcards and made TV commercials telling people that I want to raise taxes by 30%, which is just an outright, complete lie. It is not true. There's no way I would have gotten President Trump's endorsement if I was a pro-tax person. I want to reduce taxes. I want to go to Washington, D.C., rein in the spending there, wrangle the existing congressmen, and work with the House Freedom Caucus to reduce taxes, to separate the spending bills, so that rather than having these massive omnibus spending bills that cost the American people tremendously, and continuing resolutions which continue that sin, break all those bills up. Let's hold our elected accountable for every single dollar that is spent. I don't care if we have to spend a whole day or a whole week just going through bill by bill. That's how you prevent sending $40 million to Pakistan for gender studies that happens to get stuffed into a bigger bill as pork. And then your congressman comes home and they, ask him why you voted for that. It's like, well, we had to fund the military. And so, we had to. It's like, no, just break it up. Why is this so difficult? You guys set the rules. You're there representing the people. This is not the government's money. This is we the people's money. So let's break it up. There's no, contest about this. Let's do what's right for the American people. Last I checked, if it wasn't for our consent, you wouldn't have the government wouldn't exist anyways. And so anyway, what they're basing it on, and they only tell people the partial truth, is that I've supported the fair tax initiative in the past. And the fair tax is quite interesting in that it does have a higher retail tax, nothing close to 30%, but it also eliminates the IRS and all other taxes on a federal level. And so it's actually a tax reduction. And so, but of course, they're not going to use that. They'd rather just tell everybody like, oh, they want to increase taxes by 30%. And it's just not true. So.
Well, and that's just, if I knew nothing else about it, just hearing that Trump wanted that, and that you supported what Trump wanted. Trump is not an increased taxes kind of politician. Right, yeah. So it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't add up there.
Let me, where the heck is it? I think I have it sitting here. This was a mailer that just came out yesterday. This is just, it's so bogus. 30% tax on childcare, utilities, housing, healthcare, education, and insurance, and your dog. That what won't Jerrod Sessler tax? This is a lie. These postcards probably cost, I don't know, $70,000 or more to send to the district. I mean, we only have the money to send, 3 or 4 of them. Dan Newhouse is sending these every other day. And of course, he puts himself on the other side looking all pretty. And, it's just lies. So, there's lots of other things he says on this one. This one's complete lies. Here, you can see he says, I'm against the border. First of all, it makes me look like incredibly evil,
Right.
here, right? Look at that, just terrible. And then saying I want to defund the border, which is not true. And then saying that I'm against Donald Trump. Donald Trump endorsed me. Why? How? I've never been against Donald Trump. I've been before Donald Trump, since he came down the escalator. I'm a business guy. I was roped into voting for Ross Perot many years ago because I thought he'd run the country like a business. Of course, I support Donald Trump. And so, he's trying to, basically defame me in that way. And he says in this one that I wanted to defund the border by defunding Homeland Security. Now, let me tell you where this comes from, so people have some backstory. They understand how they twist, what people are saying. So, number one, there is only one policing organization in the country that doesn't have regional jurisdiction, and that's the CBP. They're not limited to any jurisdiction. So like your county sheriffs and deputies, they're limited to the county. Your city police are limited to the city. The state troopers are police. They're limited to the state. The CBP has complete jurisdiction across the whole country, which, they should. They need to. They're there to protect the borders, and that includes ports, which are, all throughout the country. Ports of entry could be airports, could be shipping ports, as well as borders. And so what happened was, a couple of years ago, there was an article that came out that said that CBP was expanding and they're opening offices all over the country, internal, and I made a comment on that saying that I didn't agree with that the Border Patrol needed to focus on keeping the country safe, not becoming a national police system. And of course, we don't want a national police. You look at countries that have national police, that means your local police officer that might come knocking on your door reports to the president. We don't want that in America. We want a decentralized government in America, a representative government and a decentralized government. And so, of course, they take that and somehow twist it into, I want to defund the border or defund, Border Patrol or whatever. So you can see, Julie, how this stuff is it's just a lie. And of course they're propagating it. So,
and it's easy for them to twist things like that for the average citizen who really doesn't have any idea of what's going on or the intricacies of all these, proposed policies or policies that they're talking about. So they're taking advantage of the ignorance, really.
They are, yeah, and that's exactly what these mailers do. There's one mailer that, several of these mailers, I've gotten feedback from people who they said this one in particular, they said they felt like this mailer in particular was just so evil. Like it just carried evil with it. Like it shouldn't be in your house. Like it was just so nasty. And so anyway, and these things are just, pervasive, all these different things that he's sending out. I want open border, I support defunding the Border Patrol. It's just lies. And so why would you want to elect some? This is my biggest problem with all of this. I don't mind people pointing out the facts if they were the facts, but these are lies, number one. So why would you want to elect someone to public office to represent you who's comfortable lying? Number one. Number two, for someone who, like Dan Newhouse, who has spent his whole life as public servant in political office, why isn't he running on his resume? Why isn't he telling us, hey, here's all, when President Trump was in office, they had a webpage on the White House thing where you could go to where it would just list like everything that President Trump accomplished. Like that's like day one for me. Like, let's start the list so we know we can, like, I don't want to do this campaigning ever again. It'll be like, hey, here's what I've accomplished for the people of Central Washington and the greater people of America. I'm not going to run on bashing my opponent. What a waste of time. That alone should convince people that he shouldn't be reelected.
Yeah, I think that's very telling, the fact that he isn't more interested in telling people about all the great things that he has done for them than he is about making his opponent out to be an evil man. And I 100% agree with you on that that mailer. I saw that as well. I think Yakima GOP posted it on social media, and that's how I saw it. But it's just it.
Let me just add to that, Julie, just real quick. I mean, Dan Newhouse is responsible for taking us from, he's voted for every single spending bill to take us from 13 trillion to 35, now almost $36 trillion in debt. He voted for a red flag law against our veterans. I'm a veteran. Dan Newhouse is not. He voted for a vaccine tracking database for $400 million for the government during COVID to be able to track us based on our vaccine status, which would turn into basically a chit system where the government could prevent us from being able to go certain places or buy certain things. It's totally unconstitutional, right? He voted for, in committee, Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona, who's an amazing patriot and a great congressman, submitted an amendment to the bill that would have funded the new FBI building to the tune of, I think it was $3 billion in DC. Congressman Biggs submitted an amendment to remove that funding. You know, this was just a few months ago. And in committee, Dan Newhouse stomped on that amendment and made sure that stayed in there. That was what happened in committee. Then that bill went to the House floor and got passed. And of course, that thing got funded. So that new FBI building in DC is funded because of Dan Newhouse, because of our congressman. And that's just a travesty, because otherwise we would have had that amendment be successful, and the funding would have gotten kicked out.
Right. It you know, when he votes like that, and I don't know the logic for him specifically, but so I'm speaking more generally about politicians that do this bipartisan stuff. It secures sort of their job placement, or they get threatened by different people. They have donors that, you know, won't fund them if they don't vote a certain way. There's a lot of backroom stuff that goes on. I follow Thomas Massie, and I know that you do too, Jerrod, and you're probably connected with him offline as well. But he does a really good job of bringing to the people sort of what actually happens in DC, so that we know the reality of what they're doing. And it's all political theater, a lot of this stuff, and the puppets are playing a role, and they're doing what they need to do to what they feel like will secure their place in government.
And isn't that what we should all be doing? I mean, I was on the phone with Thomas Massie just a couple of weeks ago. He and I have known each other for a long time. We're both engineers. We think very similar. And I said something, I asked him about something that was going on, and he said, in this very, you know, friendly, fatherly tone, he's like, "Oh, Jerrod, let me explain to you how this really works." So yeah, I have a lot of respect for him. He's a very smart man. He also has the stones to stand on his own. And
Right.
And I feel like that's exactly what we need in this district. And one of the things that people don't realize, and I'll just contrast, just for an example, with I mean, we could use Joe Kent, but I don't want to say something that could affect him. But just say Scott Perry, for example, in Pennsylvania. People might not know him, but he's a great congressman, member of the House Freedom Caucus, in fact, one of the founding members. And he's in a tight district. And so every 2 years, his race is really close. He has to work really hard to win. And that puts him in a spot where when he says something, he has a lot more risk of losing his seat by maybe upsetting the wrong people, right?
Right.
This is why this particular race is so important for us to dislodge Dan Newhouse, because Newhouse will not say those things. He won't be bold. He won't speak for the American people like Thomas Massie does, as you mentioned. Because in this district, we're basically a plus 25, 26, so meaning that we lean very heavily Republican. And so you can have a more bold, vocal representative in a district like that, which can help the entire caucus, because like Matt Gaetz, or, you know, some of these different people who have the strength to be able to use that capital without getting dislodged, you know, and you know, that sort of thing. And so people have to realize that this is a very important race for the America First MAGA patriots throughout the country to win, because it puts somebody in a spot where they can be vocal. They can tell people exactly what's going on. They can act like a true representative without being worried about what the ramifications are in the race.
And I believe that's why all of the county GOPs in your district have endorsed you, because that is what they want. They are conservative Republicans in that district. And regardless about what the establishment, the rhinos, the mainstreamers, whatever you want to call them, they will tell you, well, we're in Washington, and so we have to compromise. We have to be more moderate to win. That's not true, especially in this district. This is a very conservative district. And as Jerrod just said, this district isn't just important for Washington State, but it's important for America. So, for instance, this morning I was with a couple of friends from church, and I was telling them that, I had this going on this afternoon. And then I started telling them about you, Jerrod, and, that we need to get you in Congress because it will strengthen the America First movement and strengthen the Freedom Caucus, because we need to build those numbers. And so they were like, oh, okay, well, let's all pray for him right now. So praying for Jerrod from here, in Florida, because this seat matters not just to Washington, but to America as a whole. And we need to have leaders who are willing to stand up for the people. And I believe, Jerrod, that you will do that. And I know that you know that if you don't do that, that I will be one of the first people, probably after your wife, to call you and say, why did you vote that way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, and I appreciate that. I very much feel the weight of the responsibility of this kind of a position. And I feel I appreciate that, because I want that accountability, because I am still just human, and I always will be. And I think our submission to God and our relationships with each other to draw us into that relationship with God is very important. And we can also help each other. You can help me to see things in a way that I may not otherwise be able to see them. And I fully believe that. And if you look at and you know this, but if you look at the right side of that collector hat that you're wearing, it says pray and act. And the other side, the other side. The right side. Yeah. It says pray and act, because that's what we got to do. If we want to see restoration, we want to see a renaissance in America, we want to see revival in America, we have to pray and act. And as conservative Christians, we pray, sometimes, but we don't act. We don't put action. We don't put feet. Now you do, Julie, and many other people do. And that's great. But if you read the book of James, it's very clear. It's unbelievably clear that God calls us to submit to him, and then let that submission drive our actions as we go about our daily lives. And I just feel like that's incredibly important. And I want to encourage people to do that. I want to thank you, Julie, for praying for me, and for being a voice, and for you for not just stopping at prayer, but also you've put so much action to your life, and behind your prayers, that I know that God is steering you and driving you. And by God's grace, he's helping you to lead, a lot of conservative ladies who maybe don't understand, civics as much as you do, or, whatever, but they're learning. And I think that's great. So totally agree with you. And I appreciate accountability.
Well, and I think that, people like you, and I'm just going to assuming that you win, you would want that. You would want that engagement with your constituents. And I think you would probably welcome it from people who are citizens that aren't your constituents, just because you care about the voice of the people, because for all of your life, you have been the people.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you have the spirit that our founding fathers wanted in people that went to be elected and go serve their country, in that you step out of your regular life and go serve.
Right.
And, because you know what it's like in the real world, operating as a person. This isn't a political career for you. It's actually a servant position, which I think we need to get back to that, which means that regular people like you and I need to be willing to step up into these positions. And even if you can't do election, if you don't want to be a candidate and get elected, you can take action in so many other ways. And that's kind of that is what CLW is all about. And Conservative Ladies of America is teaching people not just to pray, but to act, like the hat says.
Yeah, there's opportunities at all levels, and it doesn't actually take a large percentage of the population to engage. If you go back to the Revolutionary War, there's only less than 3% of the population engaged, and somehow by God's grace, this country became. And you read about some of the circumstances and different things that happen, and it's like only by God's grace that we made it through those trials and struggles. And I feel the same way about where we're at today. It doesn't take everyone. I think if everyone did a tiny amount, then it would be a lot easier. But at the same time, I also feel like I'm stepping into this position in a way so that other people don't have to. Like, I'm going to take care of some of the heavy lifting from a political standpoint, and repelling some of the threats and doing some of these things so that you guys can go fishing and can go hunting and enjoy your safety in your community and build your businesses and do your things while I'm sort of shouldering. Not that I'm going to be alone or do anything like that, and certainly need a lot of help from people and stuff, but that's kind of the way I see it. And honestly, it's interesting because I'm very focused on how do we combat the threat that has become our government. All of these people who don't seem to really understand that these representatives are not actually fighting for us. And it's so, it's like they've turned this thing into this big selfish, kind of thing. And, and so once you get past that, then you can sort of, you have the relationships that you need in order to move the things forward that help the country. But we just have to stop. We have to take these jackhammers off of America and get these people out of there that are hurting our country.
Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as like the attack ads? Because I would like to get into some of the other policy issues.
Let's go into that. I was just reading this Kurt Gaveston's comment. He said, leave religion out of the conversation. Well, it's also part of the First Amendment. If we want to talk about it, we can.
Right.
The First Amendment of the Constitution prohibits Congress from making laws that establish a religion. I don't know how anything we've said. I agree with you. No problem. And same with Jeff Meyer there. America's not a theocracy. Totally agree. It's not a theocracy, and it's not a theocracy for anything, So anyway,
maybe they're getting at the comments about the Muslim thing. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. That was interesting. And it was effective for us because one of the things that we're doing is, we know that Dan Newhouse is courting the Democrats. He's sending texts out to Democrats that bragging about impeaching President Trump and bragging about, his participation in the January 6th commission and the stand he took, and this bold, he's got one pack that's like, Dan Newhouse was one of the only Republicans that had the guts to stand up to this insurrection. It's like, this kind of stuff. And so, we know pretty close what percentage of the Democrats he needs to vote for him. And so obviously we want to do what we can to prevent that. There is a write-in candidate named Teresa Boyd. And so we leveraged that Muslim comment, which was really random, to turn that into other stories that mentioned Teresa Boyd and letting the Democrats know, like, hey, there's basically 39% of the Democrats are not going to vote in this race because it's Republican on Republican. And so let's give them somebody to vote. Those 39% can vote for this Democrat write-in candidate. So let me just talk about the comment itself. I was asked quite, it wasn't a shock because I've talked about this before, but again, I'm an engineer, very square-cornered, very pragmatic. The Quran, which I have read a lot of, not all of it, but it calls for, in 3 spots in there, it calls for the killing of unbelievers. So people who don't believe in Allah, which is part of the, it's underneath the overall Muslim, religion. or Muslim is a religion underneath that. And so I said, because, and this was the premise behind what I was saying. I said that, you know, that Muslims shouldn't be elected to Congress. And what's behind that is this idea that, in which, by the way, you have to preface.
You said devout. I just want that is a key piece of it.
Yeah. Basically, people that believe in like Sharia law and all this, you know, believe in what I just said, the killing of people who don't, unbelievers. Because obviously that would mean anybody, that becomes a theocracy, right? And that's exactly what Jeff's point was, I think. And so you look at that and you see, you know, these folks that place their hand. A lot of people think when everybody swears into Congress, they put their hand on the Bible and they raise their hand and they take the oath of office. But the Muslims, and again, I'm not the one to judge whether they're devout or not. I don't know. That's not my point. My point was, why would you elect or you wouldn't want to elect someone who is a devout Muslim? But if you put your hand on the Quran and then you raise your hand, in that moment, you have your hand on a book that calls for the killing of people who are non-Muslims.
Right.
While at the same time, with your other hand and with your words, you're taking the oath of office to the Constitution. That creates this problem, right? Because they're in conflict. So you either have to become a Muslim that becomes an unbeliever and is therefore subject to the threat of death because you're going to honor the Constitution, or you don't honor the Constitution because you believe what this book that you're putting your hand on says. I'm not saying that, you know, any American who's eligible legally shouldn't be elected. You can do whatever you want to do. What I'm saying is, why would the voters vote for someone who can't truly honor their oath of the Constitution? That's all I'm saying. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone that they should or shouldn't, anything like that. It's like, that's just pragmatic. It's just the truth.
Well, and part of the complaint from people who had an issue with this was that you were trying to, you know, control people's First Amendment right for freedom of religion. Well, you weren't saying that they couldn't have that religion. You were just saying that that should disqualify them from holding public office.
No, I wasn't even saying that. I'm not saying that. I don't think we should have some kind of a religious test. If you read Article 6 in the Constitution, it says clearly there's no religious test. I'm not even saying that. What I'm saying is, it's just my opinion that we should not elect them to office, because in the example that I gave was, if you fill Congress with greater than 50% of Muslims, and especially devout Muslims, but even in that case, I don't even know if they would have to be devout because of this threat. If they disagree with the movement of the momentum, then they become an unbeliever. They become one of the, what do they call them? The infidels, or whatever they call them, that would be subject to death. And so, are they going to honor that commitment, or are they going to honor the commitment to the Constitution? And it's just an extreme example, but, you know, I guess 25, 30 years ago, up to that point in the 220 years of American history, there was never a Muslim in Congress. And now we have 3, and there's actually been 4 or 5. And so again, I'm not taking away anyone's rights, either to their religion, to their opportunity to run for a political office. The truth is, almost all Muslims in America have the same or very similar values that you and I do. They value human life. They value family. They value unborn lives. They stand against a lot of the lunacy that's going on in America today, but they also stand against devout Sharia law being implemented. And that's part of the reason, probably one of the biggest reasons, why they love America. And so I've had support from many Muslims and I have donors who are Muslims who have called me and said, yeah, what you said is true. So, and then there's a comment just in this about, just about what are we going to do to protect.
I don't know if Linda just started listening, because she said, you said that Muslims shouldn't be elected to Congress, and you've just discussed that in great detail.
Yeah, I covered
maybe
that.
Rewind a little bit, Linda.
Yeah, I didn't say that at all. I mean, that's not what I meant by what I said. So, but she does ask, what's Jerrod's plan to protect the rights in his district that are not white or Christian? Well,
what are your plans?
Yeah, my plans are, what's your citizenship? I will protect you if you're American. And I
Right.
feel like that's my responsibility. I honestly don't really care what color your skin is. This is very interesting, this whole racial thing that the left uses. You're not white and I'm not white. White it looks a lot more like this. Like there's a big difference between the two, right? I'm a shade color just as you are, and you get everybody else in the planet and you line them all up together. It's like, yeah, there's going to be different shades. It's so loony
I
that
find it's very I feel marginalized when people call me white because clearly my skin is like tan.
it's beautifully tanned. It's Florida tanned, but yeah, we have to get past this racial rhetoric or even the idea. The thing is, what's interesting about Christianity and the reason why, even though America would never be a theocracy, even as a Christian theocracy, is because the very nature of Christianity is against a theocracy. Christianity says that everyone is welcome. Christianity says that everyone has it. And so it's like you want devout Christians to be in positions of leadership because they love everyone. They're very accepting. They believe that grace and that grace of God covers everyone. So anyway, let's go on to your next policy question.
So, you've already pretty much addressed the whole issue with the omnibus, and that's really a big deal to a lot of people because that's what on both sides, I think, of on the political spectrum at large. I think because Americans are, we're seeing our dollars go overseas, and yet we've got inflation and gas prices through the roof and grocery prices, and you've already really pretty much covered that in detail. I know in your district, let's talk specifically about your district because you're in a heavily agricultural district. Do you have specific policies related to agriculture that would impact your district that you are hoping to work on in Congress? And I know Congressman Massey, that's a big thing for him as well. So I don't know if there's already something going on that you would want to jump on board with, or what your thoughts are there.
Oh my goodness, there's so many things. In bringing up Massey, he and I both raise cattle, and so it's very interesting. Some legislation that we would like to see to give more freedom for people who raise cattle. We call it walking food. We have fields and gardens and different things so where we grow stuff, but all of our animals that's our walking food. We're raising them. And there definitely needs to be some freedom on that. There's way too much regulation on the American people in every category, but certainly in farming. There's a couple things I would like to touch on. One is the dams. There's a big threat to the dams. It's totally lunatic. And for those that are interested, look at what's happening with the Klamath River and the removal of the dams in Southern Oregon and Northern California, and the complete mess that it is now. And the environmentalists, I call them the over-environmentalists. I believe God made this earth and that we should all be interested in protecting the environment. But these over-environmentalists are responsible for the majority of the regulation that we see on our backs. So I have an 8-point plan to save our dams and to protect our dams. And what most people don't realize, it's actually quite interesting. I did a debate with Dan Newhouse on January 4th of this year and only had 90 seconds to answer the question. And so I only gave my first point out of 8 points in my plan for how we protect the dams. And 20 days later, his team introduced, none of his bills that he introduces ever have co-sponsors, and they never get out of committee or go to the House floor. But he introduced a bill that was basically what I described in that debate, but it was only one of eight steps in the overall plan. So I have a plan to protect the dams. What most people don't realize is this is a over-environmentalist move. They don't understand that they talk about it being motivated by salmon, but they don't understand that the 4 lower Snake River dams that they want to remove, they all have beautiful salmon ladders. 100% of the fish that go upstream make it up through those salmon ladders, the fish ladders. There's no issue with transiting them up, and better than 90%, 98% of the juveniles that are coming down, the little baby, they call them fish fries, make it down through the dams. And those dams also have locks, which, basically move cargo on ships and barges. They allow it to raise and lower it so they can step down all these dams, getting that cargo moved out for a fraction of what it would cost to do on the highway. And so it's a total over-environmentalist move. And then what's interesting about it is the fifth dam up, which is in Idaho, up the Snake River, does not have salmon ladder or locks, but they're not clamoring about that one. But from an engineering standpoint, the reason is because they can't remove that one until they remove the ones that are below it. And so that's kind of where that comes from. And that there's a lot of water issues in our district, and everyone needs to know that we do not have a shortage of water. A lot of people talk about that. Oh, we're using up all the water. We have no shortage of water. We have an excess of regulation, and it's hurting our farmers dearly. For example, the Columbia Basin Irrigation Project was started, I think it was 81 years ago, and we're only about 60 to 65% through on expanding that irrigation water to the farmlands. We have families that have been growing crops for 7 or 8 decades who are now drilling 5,000 feet, that's almost a mile, into the ground to pull water up to water their crops. And they're running these massive engines, pumping fuel into those things all summer long just to pull water up out of these aquifers. And they keep having to drill deeper and deeper and deeper in order to get the water they need, all because the Columbia Basin Project is not finished almost 100 years later. I mean, it's over 80 years. And so I want people to hear that very clearly. We do not have a shortage of water. We have an excess of regulation. We need to get our farmers the water they need, and we get the regulation off their back. Let me just end with this, Julie, in regards to our district and agriculture. I'm a business guy, been in business for over 30 years. We do raise cattle here. We have a small farm. We're not like a factory farm. We don't have thousands of acres or anything like that. But I understand I understand the plight, because, I live on 70 acres here. We have friends that have hundreds. We have friends that have thousands of acres, and we understand the business of farming. And let me tell you something, when in a restaurant, when your costs for soda pop or hamburger or, employees, labor, different things go up, you just go out to the reader board and you just raise the prices on your burgers and your fries and your soda pop, right? That you don't do that with farming. In farming, like right now, they're just finishing up picking all the apple crops. They're going to send those into a pack house or a pack shed where they wash the apples, they sort the apples, they box the apples, they palletize them, and they put them in a cooler, and they might sit there for 6 months or a year before they get sold. And there's like right now, we had a massive crop from last year. It was over 140 million bins of apples. And this year it's smaller, but my point is, if you look at the retail price of apples today, it's like double what it was 5 years ago, but the growers are still getting the same amount. And it's like that across the board with a lot of our growers. They don't have the ability to go out and change the price of whatever it is they're growing. And so we need to protect our farmers. We need to get the regulations off their back, because trust me, their fuel is increased, their insurance, their labor, their fertilizer, their property taxes, everything has increased for the farmers, and they are struggling. And we absolutely have to support them, and we have to figure out how we can do even a better job with the work that they're doing to feed America. And so that's kind of my cliff notes on what we want to do. There's a lot more that we need to do for the farming community. What's interesting, Julie, is we have this interesting conundrum here. The majority of the people in our district are actually reside between Yakima, Tri-Cities, and Moses Lake. 70% of the voters are there. These are city people for the most part, especially in Tri-Cities and some in lesser so in Yakima, but in lesser so in Moses Lake as well. But they're still not farming people. All the farming people cover all the land in between there, and they are not. They're not the majority of the population, but almost all the people in these cities are sympathetic to the farmers. They understand, because they live and a lot of them were born and raised in these farms around here. And they understand the value of that. And they see how our farmers here in Washington state, 60% of our products are exported either to other countries or throughout the United States. The farms that are here literally feed America. So anyway, that's just a little bit of an overview, but we definitely have to fight for farmers. One thing that people need to realize is Dan Newhouse has misled people for years, thinking that he is on the agricultural committee, which he's not. in Congress. He's on the Appropriations Committee. And they think just because he's actually, I guess he's a CPA or an accountant or something like that, but he calls himself a farmer. And his brother and stuff run the place. And he also he has a place on the beach in Florida, where my understanding is that's his primary place of residence. And so why you would want to reelect a guy like that here is beyond me.
Oh, where's he at in Florida?
I don't know. Somebody told me, and I don't want to say the city because I think I know where it's at, but I've never done the research to confirm that.
Gotcha.
And
just a note,
his wife passed away a few years ago, and he remarried a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. And so that further kind of disconnects him from the district.
Yeah. I had to give Jeff and Linda the boot because they were just leftist trolls who were just being annoying in the comments. I'm not one to censor people, but I also don't have.
Yeah, I read some of the stuff they were saying. It's just like, I get so tired of trying to rebut some of these things that people say.
Yeah, they were just being trolls. And
we got people that want to hear what you have to say. Oh my goodness. And you get into conversations with them and you tell them like, hey, that's not actually true. And then they just pivot and they say something. It's like, oh.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so we don't have time for that today. Don't you call yourself a farmer and rancher? Yes, we've just gone over that, Hannah. I want to
take my camera to the window and you guys could see my oh boy.
I want to talk about the border because in your part of the state, you get a lot of migrant workers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know, I don't know if it impacts your area of the state as much as it does the kind of activity that we've got coming over the border with the criminals and the drugs and that sort of thing, or if that's more kind of in the Puget Sound area. But I know that you have strong feelings about the border. Most of us have pretty strong feelings about the border. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that and where that might go in 2025?
Yeah. Let's see. So I fully support President Trump's position on the border. What's interesting about Trump is he's always right. It's just amazing. It might take a while for it to come around, but think about it. Remember back in 2015 when he came down the escalator and he started talking about all the threats, the border, China, fentanyl, and all of us are like, what? Like, so I fully believe that. I think every single conservative American feels much less secure and safe. And if you read this beautiful little book here that I was sharing you earlier, which by the way, Turning Point has a new pocket constitution. This thing is awesome. It's got just really cool little pictures and little stories. And so it's not like I'm used to the sort of dryer when I have several of them, I kind of mark them up and stuff. But if you read the Declaration of Independence, which is usually in these with the Constitution, it's quite interesting because it gives you a clue as to what the purpose for the federal government is. And you have to go back in your mind to prior to 1913 when they instituted the 16th Amendment. And in February, and then in December of 1913, they instituted the Federal Reserve. You have to go prior to those to kind of think about before we had this gargantuan and growing federal government. The Declaration of Independence says that under tyranny, men will do nothing. That's speaking of men and women. But it's interesting because the next sentence says, until such time as the tyranny becomes insufferable. And at that time, the people will stand. And it says that it's not only their right, but it is their responsibility to throw off the bonds of tyranny. And this is the key, Julie, and everybody that's watching, for this is a absolute direct clue as to what our framers' intent for the federal government was. It says that they institute for themselves a new government that will ensure their future security. That is the point of this dual federalist system. The federal government is responsible for keeping us safe, and that includes unity among the states. So it forces interstate commerce, meaning, and that's not just selling goods, but actual movement. So you can't say that, Julie can't travel from Washington to Florida because she crosses all these state borders, and that you have to have citizenship in all these states in order to drive or something. It prevents that. The federal government prevents that. It allows you to do commerce across state borders. So you operate in the midst of, with the advantage of this united group of states, while also having the sovereignty of your own state. And I would ask people to think for themselves, do you feel safer now than you did maybe 10 or 20 years ago, or back when we were kids running around the streets?
Right.
Do you feel safer now? And if not, whose responsibility is that? And if you read the Federalist Papers, the responsibility starts with the federal government to keep us safe from external threats and from organized internal threats. It's a faction. The government never did take responsibility for keeping us safe between each other. That's covered by a thing called the social compact. And so each of us is responsible for keeping each other safe by honoring the Constitution, honoring the natural rights that the Constitution is based upon. And then on a greater sense, the government is responsible for protecting us. The government system is designed to protect us from factions. And then the federal government is responsible for keeping us safe from people from other countries and foreigners, and ensuring that we maintain unity so that we don't have states going to war with each other and things like that. So that's my perspective on sort of safety and security. And if we don't have a safe border, look at HR 2 that was passed by the House over a year ago now. And basically what it said was that it prevented people who were not citizens of the United States from being able to vote in our elections. Every single House Democrat voted against that bill. Every single House Republican voted for that bill, and the bill passed because the Republicans had a majority, still have a majority. And it's been sitting in Chuck Schumer's inbox ever since, and he's never brought it to the Senate floor, which tells you Chuck Schumer's a Democrat. The Democrats don't care about our safety and security. They don't care about the fact that our border is wide open. They don't care about the fact that countries like Venezuela and Nicaragua and Honduras are literally emptying their jail cells and shipping those people to the border to come to the United States. And what's the greatest atrocity is the fact that is harming the American people. Look at people like Laken Riley, who lost her life brutally after she was brutally raped by these scumbags, and hundreds of others. And the fact that the legacy that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will leave is the trail of blood and rapes and murders that will continue because of this just absolute abhorrent divergence from our constitutional rights, all through this thing called policy, which the executive branch should not have the authority to thwart American law without repercussion. We have to have checks and balances to prevent the executive branch from being able to violate the law through their policy, which is exactly what Obama did with the southern border and our borders in general. And it's just been amplified with this Biden-Harris administration.
Yeah, and I think, if we don't get Trump in office, well, I mean, if we had a Republican Senate and a Republican House, it would make it better. But if you have Harris in office, I think that the situation at the border is going to get incrementally worse. I think it's going to be much, much worse.
Yeah, and it's astounding how much worse it's gotten since Obama was in office. And in my times visiting the borders, both the northern border and the southern border, and even ports of entry, because the fact that what the Biden-Harris administration has done is they're actually flying people in to the different ports of entry and just setting them free. And so it's not even just the border wall, like they're just putting them on airplanes and using our tax dollars to bring them in, and then using more of our tax dollars to give them cell phones and food and lodging and fancy hotels and all. It's like, what on earth? How is this even happening? How are these people not being put in jail? Not the migrants. We need to deport the migrants, but how How are we allowing these American people to do this? And furthermore, this is the really disgusting thing about it, Julie, is think about these illegals, especially ones that are already convicted criminals and even murderers from their own country that were set free to come to the United States. What do we have here? If they break the law, our current judicial system is saying, well, if they come here and they break the law, then we'll just deport them. It's like, are you serious? Like, that is the best example of Democrat short-sighted thinking I've ever heard of in my entire life. There's no justice in that.
No, there's no justice, and there's nothing to stop them from coming. I mean, you're encouraging them to
go back to they go back to their country. Where's the justice? There's no justice. Right. They're free people in their own country. Plus, what stops them from turning around and walking right back across the border and doing it again?
Right.
It's just this circular thing. And that's why I say, for generations, likely, at least for the next decade or two, as we work to try to, get bad people out of America, this blood is on the hands of Joe Biden and the cackler Kamala Harris, and it's incredibly sad. This is an atrocity on America. This could affect you and I directly. It's amazing, and the fact that part of our freedom is stolen by the fact that we don't feel as free and as safe and secure as we once did is really, really sad.
Well, and not just our physical safety and security, but also financially. We're paying for all this. Our tax dollars are paying for all of this. And I think that's very demoralizing to the American people. And
let's pull that string for a little bit here, just for a second. Let's talk about some finance stuff and kind of shift gears just a slight bit. What is the advantage to inflation? The number one advantage to inflation, the only advantage to inflation, is the government. It's a tax. Inflation is a tax, period. If it cost you $50 to go out to dinner 2 years ago or 4 years ago, and the government got 10%, they got $5 off of that meal. Today, if it cost you $100 to go out to dinner, it's still 10%. Now they're getting $10 instead of $5 for the same meal. This is a tax. Inflation is a tax. And let me tie it together. If you look at the Social Security system, it is basically bankrupt. They are hand to mouth right now. The workers of today are paying into Social Security, and that money is being immediately sent out to the people who paid into Social Security for the last 50, 60, 70 years. They do not have any savings for that. It's basically gone. And so what would be the best way to solve that problem? It would be a massive inflationary crisis, because what happens is the people that are collecting the Social Security checks today are completely screwed, because if they're getting, let's say, $1,800 a month in Trump's economy, then they could sort of afford life, right? Maybe they got some help from family and they've paid for their home, so they don't have a lot of expenses. They can maybe survive, right? It's still not probably enough. But now you double the cost of everything. Well, did the Social Security income double during that same time? Nope. They pretty much get the same thing. They get their little 1 or 2% increase. Do you see what I mean? That it's basically this diminished return. And if President Trump is not reelected, we're just going to see more inflation to the point of crushing America. We've got more personal debt right now than ever in the history of our country, because people can't afford life. They're living on their credit cards. They're maxed out, and we're literally at a breaking point in this country, and we absolutely need to fix it. We need to get wages up. We need to reopen the Keystone Pipeline, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. We need to get pumping and drilling. We need to reduce energy costs in America, and we need to get the cost of things down. And we have to start electing people that give a crap about the American people to stop this lunatic spending in Washington, D.C.
I wish I had like an applause machine in the background, because I would have it going right now, because all of what you just said, yes and amen, all of that, which is what is, I think, excites me about candidates like yourself. when you started talking about Social Security, it triggered a thought that I had. How are you on time?
I'm fine.
Okay. As you know, here in my neck of the woods, we just had a couple very big hurricanes come through.
Right.
Helene, the first one, had major damage here in Florida, but also, in North Carolina and some of the northern areas, and FEMA has, run out of money. What are your thoughts on, I mean, I could tell more stories about sort of the FEMA mess that's going on here in Florida, but with all of this, being in the news lately, do you have thoughts about how this would be addressed in Congress?
Yeah, I think one of the scariest, there's a couple of things I'll say about it. Number one is, one of the things that bothers me the most, and it has for a long time, is when somebody says, I wish someone would do something about that. Because what they're really saying a lot of times is they're saying, I wish the government would fix that. And that's anti-American. President Reagan, what was his quote? He said, the scariest 9 words
I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's not what we want. Now look at, for example, I'm a former NASCAR driver. Greg Biffle is a retired NASCAR driver. Great guy. He's been flying helicopter missions, and many other people have been flying helicopter missions, and they're collecting donations from their contacts in businesses. I mean, I saw some Husqvarna chainsaws. I saw some other blowers and lots of equipment and generators and, all kinds of things that they're carrying in. And here's my perspective on it. I believe that we should have, the government organization should have some kind of organization, but this is how I think it should be focused. I don't think FEMA should be involved to the extent that they are. And I'll explain why. Because what FEMA actually does is they take our tax dollars and they pay companies to be contractors to provide supplies during times like this. And they won't even accept donations from other companies that might happen to compete with companies that they have contracts with. And so, as you can imagine, there ends up being corruption inside of those contracts and those negotiations. I say, let that sort of stuff happen. Let the relationships make it happen. If we have a healthy, strong America, this is what it's always been on. The churches are all subject to the donations of the generous people in this country. And I think businesses generally, most business owners in America are very generous, but they want to be profitable. They want to make sure they can, not have so much regulation, so much, government tension on their backs that they can't even, stretch their arms a little bit and really take care of their employees and be generous and be able to send chainsaws and blowers and generators and things and water pumps and stuff into situations like this. So this is where I think the government should be involved. I think the government should be involved to the extent that they bring organization and strength to the local jurisdictions, police force and sheriff's force, to make sure that there's no crime. So no looting, no, person-to-person crime, these kinds of things. I think they ought to make sure that the environment is secure, and that's what their primary responsibility. And of course, life-saving aid, which could be up to and including military involvement. If we have a military base that's an hour away and they have helicopters that can go in and save lives, we darn well should do that.
Yep.
But they shouldn't get involved to the extent that they are, where it's become this situation where I don't believe that we should compete with the government, whether it's in charity or in our prosperity. We should not be competing with the government. And that's what in this situation, it's an example of where we're competing with the government in charity. And that what most people don't know is they think all that stuff that FEMA's handing out was donated by these companies. No, it wasn't. FEMA paid for that. And so we're paying to store that. We're paying for all the
with your tax dollars.
Yeah. And then you have, these lunatics that are using FEMA dollars to house, illegals, and they waste all the money. And then you have, Joe Obama sitting there saying they need to call Congress back to be able to provide more funding to FEMA. Like, really? You guys spend all the money, you go get the money somewhere, take it out of your budget for, whatever one of these loony projects is that you're spending money on.
Yeah, I'll share just a real example from us here. What we had, our kind of experience recent with FEMA. Lots of trees down in our area. We had some slight roof damage, a little bit of other damage, but most of the big problem in our area is a lot of trees fell. Big, huge oak trees, and so they're all. We have narrow roads in our neighborhood, and they're all chopped up, and they're in people's driveway, lots and lots of debris, palm trees, all that kind of stuff in the middle of the road. And we were told FEMA will come around and pick it all up. And it's been 2 weeks now since the hurricane, and they haven't even picked up the debris in the main areas. And so we were kind of asking around, well, how long did it take after Ian? Well, it took about 3 months. Wow. My husband and the neighbor were like, we're not waiting 3 months for FEMA to get here and pick this up. So they got a trailer last weekend and took 5 huge trailer loads of trees and debris and all that, did it themselves. And like the example that I'm trying to show here is, if you want the government to do it, you're going to be waiting a long time, or you're going to get second-rate service. Doing it yourself, privatizing these things is much more effective for the people. And we have to stop being a society that's so reliant on government for everything, from taking care of our kids with childcare and education. It's not working. They're failing our kids intentionally. And we've got to be willing to do our jobs, not just as parents, as citizens, and all this. We need to step up and do our jobs. So I just wanted to throw in that very real example.
Yeah. And I'll just say, we could talk about kids and some of that stuff here. For those who weren't on earlier, my introduction, Nikki and I have 3 kids. They're 19, 21, and 23. They're homeschooled from day one. Amazing people. We're so proud of them, and just very thankful for the amazing life that we've been able to have raising our kids. But a lot of people get nervous when, a good friend of mine, Thomas Massey, as we talked about earlier, and a lot of other people in Congress want to abolish the Department of Education. But they get nervous because they think that means getting rid of and closing all public schools, which it doesn't mean that at all. What we're saying is this. Right now, the Department of Education has a $72 billion a year budget. $72 billion. Thousands of employees that are doing what that our local school board members could not do. Our local school board members are elected, and they can be held accountable as a result. So if we take those funds and we push those downstream and just get rid of the national influence on the schools, then we're better off. I am a huge fan for decentralization in almost every aspect, whether it's our digital currency, or it's our school system, or it's our, just in terms of our legislative system. I think, more emphasis should be put on this. Why I don't agree with the 17th Amendment, which is terrible. The 16th, 17th, 18th Amendments were all early progressive era amendments that were very harmful to the United States. And 16th and 17th in particular castrated our state legislatures to the extent where people don't even know what district they live in anymore. They don't know who their legislators are. They don't know who their state senators are, because it doesn't matter, seemingly, right? And so, that's my take on that. We see when you have an elected group of school board members locally, you can hold them accountable because they have to be elected in. And so you can go to school board meetings and you can speak and you can hold them accountable. What part of the reason why we have to maintain the public school system is because of the fact that we have built an economic policy in America that demands the husband and wife, man and woman, both work generally. There are ways around that, but if you look at the vast majority of our economy of middle America, they have to have 2 incomes. And so, and that was created. We created that. When you and I were kids, our parents could buy a home with half a year's salary. Not anymore. How many years of salary? Now it takes 10 years of salary, 6 years of salary in order, depending on how much you make, in order to be able to buy a home. It used to be able to buy a home with 6 months of salary. And before, when we were even younger, when our parents were younger, it was even less than that. with a
and
couple months.
look at the interest rates right now. Look how expensive it is just to borrow money to buy a house.
Yeah. And so we've got a huge problem. And yeah, you're right, Justine. We need a civics class. I teach a lot of civics. It's weird because fans and friends of Dan Newhouse, who I'm running against, love to make fun of me because I'm always teaching. But the reason I am is because I had to learn this stuff. I didn't pay attention when I was younger. When I walked by the debate class when I was in high school, my shoulder was rubbing the lockers on the far side of the hallway when I walked by, because I didn't want any of that stuff to get on me. I wasn't anti-American, but I just didn't want any part of public speaking. I didn't want any part of government or civics, or I didn't know the first thing about it. And it wasn't until I got older and I started running, paying taxes and running a business and growing a family and, doing all, it was like, wow, what are they doing with all this money? Like, just take your street, for example. Like, we're real spread out here in the country, but, just look at how much taxes are being paid just in your neighborhood. And you're like, what are you guys doing with all that money? Because I don't know that I see a lot of result from that. And that kind of drives you as an entrepreneur. You're like, yeah, I want to build my business, but what are you guys doing with all that money? And you start asking questions and you start seeing how it works and learning how it works on a state level, seeing how it works on a federal level, seeing some of the brokenness. And, a lot of that is really what drove me to getting involved is seeing how it works and then seeing how bad actors are manipulating it. And so,
yeah,
we need a civics lesson. And I try to do it every time I open my mouth. I try to help people see, I mention, things in the Constitution, different amendments. What do they mean? What do they, what's the sovereign immunity of the 11th Amendment mean? What is that all about? People they haven't even read the Constitution. Look, you can read this thing in 20 minutes, and here's the biggest thing is, if you don't know what your rights are, how would you ever know if they're being violated?
Right.
And how would you ever defend it?
Well, and that's why they don't want it taught in schools, because they don't want the students to know. And, as I've been involved just for a short time in government and politics and paying attention, it's amazing to me how many people don't know. And we've got to be better. We've got to be, like Joy said, we've got to be constant students, and it's not too late for you to learn.
Totally agree.
It's not too late for any of us to learn. And you can be self-taught. You can link up with us, conservativeladiesofamerica.com or conservativeladiesofwa.com. We would love for you to join our efforts. And we're just a team of citizens that's trying to figure it out and create change.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting and be informed voters. Yes, Justine, absolutely. Is there anything, and we could go on for a long time here because there's so many issues. But I put your website in. Let me put that in again. It's Jerrod for Congress. So please go check out the website. There's lots of videos and other issues that Jerrod is passionate about, and kind of what his position is on those issues. I would really encourage all of you to, this campaign needs donations. Jerrod is not funded by any of these big corporations or big PACs. He is funded by people like you and me. Just regular citizens that are chipping in $20 here and there. So I would ask you all to go to his website, jerrodforcongress.com, chip in $20 or $100, whatever you can do, because we're down here to the wire. That would help run maybe some ads or something like that. But Jerrod is a great candidate. He will work for all Americans, and no matter where you're from in the country, you can support Jerrod financially. Jerrod will be fighting for you in Washington, D.C. And Jerrod, I know I told you the other day, but I cover you in prayer every day. I would encourage everybody watching this or watching on replay, please be praying for Jerrod and his family, especially for his protection and for God to give him wisdom as he moves forward in the days and months ahead. Any last parting words that you have, Jerrod?
Yeah, I'll just say, we've been in, as I mentioned earlier, we've been in business for decades, and we did pretty well but we've also invested heavily in this, and
Yes.
I'm not saying that because I want sympathy. I'm saying it because I want you to know my belief is that I would have nothing if it wasn't for the American dream. And we have to protect that. And I know I've made enough money in my life to know that I can go out and make it again. But I would rather fight for America to protect that American dream. And that American dream starts with an opportunity. And these people coming across the border illegally, this socialism that's being pushed throughout the country through the unfortunate current Democrat Party, isn't engendering the land of opportunity. It's engendering the land of freebies. And the land of freebies doesn't cause people to work hard because they want to see results. You see, opportunity is useless. And if it is not coupled with, I shouldn't use the word useless, opportunity, nothing happens with opportunity unless it's coupled with action. If you put effort into opportunity, then you have a chance, not a guarantee. You put effort into opportunity, then you have a chance of getting results. Now, for me, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started a bunch of businesses, and I'll tell you, I've failed at more of them than I've succeeded at. Now, it doesn't mean that I lost my shirt, but in some of them, it was really bad. Like I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But some of them, maybe it was just break even or whatever. But then in other ones, we did really well. So, when I was at the border, it was just a few months ago, I can speak some Spanish. I'm not good yet, but I'm working on it. And I was talking to these people down there and asking them, why are they coming here? Are they coming here to visit? Are they coming here for vacation? Are they coming here to work? Are they coming here to visit friends? And I really asked them, like, are you coming here to work? And it's, no. Why would we work?
They don't have
the
to.
response. It's all free. Everything's free in America. And I'm just like, oh, this is terrible. These are not the people that have been coming here for decades to work in this agricultural community or manufacturing community, different things. That's not the same. And so we have to sort of turn the tides and turn the ship here in America in regards to that. And so just back to my race, we sold our company and we've poured a lot of our savings, our life savings into this. We haven't had an income for 4 years. And we still donate. We were the largest donors in the last cycle in Washington State to other candidates, including ourselves. And I just can't imagine this going any other way than me winning in 10 days, because the country, it would be a utter disservice to the country not to elect somebody like me, especially when I'm running against someone like Dan Newhouse who has just utterly betrayed us in Congress as a Republican, but yet, has like a Liberty score of less than 50%. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate the support. I realize a lot of people can't do anything, but I hope that my perspective helps you. We have spent over $1 million on this. We have foregone income for 4 years, which would have been even more. And I'm submitting myself to a job where I'm literally getting beat up on a constant basis.
True.
I mean, we had
to
bounce people out of here just because of the lies. Right before I got on, I got an email from somebody in the district who has done nothing for 4 years but spread lies about me, which the lies work. If you tell a lie enough times and enough people say it, they're going to believe it. And I just saw that he sent out another email with a bunch of lies about, it's like, oh my gosh, where do these people come from? And so I don't like that. But even in the midst of that, as I was writing a response to help people see what my perspective is on these people lying to me, I don't want people to attack them. Just pray for them. And I don't have any plans for retribution or attack. I have work to do. I want to go help save our country. And so I feel like, those people will be put in their place when everyone else, including them, sees the great work that I'll do. I believe that God's called me to do this. I think I will be one of the most consequential congressmen to ever get elected. I've got a lot of great ideas and a lot of plans for how we can help turn this country around. And ultimately, I don't really want to do this for too many years because I'd like to be able to come home and get back to, the business work, but I don't want to do the business work in an environment where I'm constantly feeling like I'm threatened by my own government.
Yeah.
So thank you, Julie, for having me, and thanks everybody for listening and for supporting me in this. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, God bless you, Jerrod. We are proud to support you and endorse your campaign. I am honored to call you a friend, and just continue to pray for you. And really, I agree with you that you would be a consequential congressman for the United States, for all of the people of the United States. So thanks everyone for watching today. Please, you can share the replay of this video. We would really appreciate this, especially with people in Washington's 4th Congressional District. And one last time, that's JerrodForCongress.com. Thanks everybody.